Hello, welcome. This is the second day, the first day of the 45th week. And I pray for you again that no blessing of this week will elude you. No favor, no goodness that this week has will elude you. I pray also that no evil that the enemy wants to send into this week will find you. That the Lord will protect you, the Lord will shield you from attacks and traps of the enemy, that this 45th week will go well for you. Now, this is the first day of the week, and the greatest blessing of the first season is the presence of God. That God is going with you. That is the best that can happen. For God to say to you, I am with you. We are together. I will bless you. I will uphold you. I will help you. That is the biggest blessing. So, on the first day of creation, God said, let there be light. God did not say, let there be light because he needed light to see. No. Oftentimes we talk about, oh, let there be light because you can't do anything until there's light. God did not need to see anything. God sees in the dark. His eyes are not human eyes. It's only humans who can see in the dark. But with God, both light and darkness are the same. So when God said, let there be light, it was not to help himself to see the condition or to see how bad the situation was so he could start work. No. God is light. He was saying, here I come. Here I come. He was establishing his values. He was establishing, himself, revealing his identity because God is light and in him there is no darkness at all. The light of the first day did not come from the sun, the moon, or the stars. The light came from God himself. And that's the same thing, it will look like the sun and the moon and the stars are all that we have until you get to Revelation chapter 21, and then you learn that the city has no need of the sun because the Lord himself, the Lamb, will be the light of the city. It was on the fourth day of creation that God made the sun, the moon, and the stars. So God didn't need the sun to do anything. So the light he released on the first day of creation was the light of his presence. He was saying to the circumstance, light has come. I represent light, right? Light represents me. So that was his way of announcing that God has come. And I pray that the light of divine presence will go with you on this first day of the week. Now, if we're going to have the first, the light of divine presence, then we must pursue his will. Jesus revealed something in John chapter 8, verse 29. Jesus said, he who sent me has not left me. He said, the Father has not left me because I do those things that please him. God is not an emotional God that, oh, if I can just clap for him, then he's going to be happy. If I can just dance for him, he's going to be happy. Jesus said, the Father, he didn't say the Father has not left me because I'm his son. He said, the Father, he who sent me is with me. The Father has not left me, for I do those things that please him. When a voice came from heaven to Jesus, he said, you are my son in whom I am well pleased. So it is divine pleasure that makes way for divine presence. And of course, with divine presence comes divine power. So that's the first thing to be concerned with. In the first day of the week, we need divine presence to go with us, to open the door to sleep. And because this is the first day of the week, God is first and the first belongs to him. So this is a day to honor God and to, pursue his pleasure. Now, the book of Romans holds the guiding light for this week. The book of Romans is the 45th book of the Bible, and it holds the light. It shines light for us to see what God wants to do, to see where God wants to go. That was the first epistle of Paul, not first by placement. It was not the first epistle to be written, but it was the first by placement. Remember, the books of the Bible are not where they are because of chronology. They are not where they are necessarily because of subject. The books are where they are because of the seasons they speak to. They're where they are because of the seasons they speak to. All right, so the book of Romans is the 45th book of the Bible, and that book has 16 chapters. And if you split that into the 7 days of the week, you're going to have 2 chapters each and a remainder of 2 chapters. And so we're going to give the remaining 2 chapters to the first 2 days of the week. So the first day of the 45th week is a day to reflect on the first 3 chapters of the book of Romans. Now, since the first day is a day we ought to pursue the pleasure of God, these first 3 chapters of Romans shows us what we must deal with to pursue the pleasure of God. We must deal with that. We must deal with that. So the first chapter tells us, Paul talks about the necessity of preaching the gospel. He said, this is the power of God. This is the power of God. He talks about there's the power of God unto salvation to everyone. So the gospel becomes an essential because we want people to come into the place of, pursuing the pleasure of God. And so, Paul says, I'm a debtor to preach the gospel to everyone so that all men can have access to this place of divine pleasure. All men can have access to the place of divine pleasure. And now, so we must be able to deal with whatever displeases God. So in the first chapter, it talks about the wrath of God revealed, how that people, give themselves to perversion, all kinds of perversion, doing things that are not, right. Men giving themselves to men and women to women and all kinds of, people debasing themselves by worshiping idols. Not only do they do these things, they encourage others, who to practice the same thing. So Paul, the writer of the book of Romans, gives attention to that. In chapter 2, it goes to those who keep the law. Say, well, even though you think that you keep the law, you have no excuse. So it's not just about knowing that you should not do this. It's also about going ahead to do what you ought to do. If you say others should not lie, do you lie? If you say others should not do this, are you doing the same thing? So it's a season, is a time that we must give our attention to the pursuit of God's pleasure. So that's why the first 3 chapters is showing us what needs to be dealt with so we can pursue the pleasure of God. You get into Romans chapter 3, it tells you that all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. So there's no way God can be pleased with this kind of life unless something is done to it. It says God will look down to see if there is anyone who does righteousness. There is none who does righteousness. No, not one. So if we're going to pursue the pleasure of God, it's a time to look into our lives and look at things in our lives that are contrary, that are displeasing to God, and deal with those things. Is there any aspect of my life where God is displeased? It's a time to deal with it. It's a day of examination. One time I went somewhere to preach and I was guest minister and I spoke about obedience. And that night I went to where I lodged and I prayed and I said, Lord, I just spoke on obedience. I want to be sure that I am living in obedience. I'm walking in obedience too. And I want to know if there's any area in my life where I have not submitted to you, where I'm not walking in obedience. And the Lord said, there is. I was shocked. How could I have preached in obedience while walking in disobedience? I asked the Lord, what is that? And he told me, what I want you to do here, you have not done it. Oh, it was painful to me. How could I be a guest minister? I've traveled several miles to come and speak about obedience, but I was not living in obedience. It took that encounter to bring correction into my life. So what that means is that if we are going to pursue the pleasure of God, then we must deal with all rebellion in our heart. We must deal with everything in our life that is displeasing to God. We must pursue his pleasure. That's the will of God. Now, but at the end, in the closing verses of Romans chapter 3, we know the wages of sin is death. Okay, that's Romans chapter 6. Romans chapter 3, shows us that all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. That's where we are. That's where we start to realize that, yes, something is wrong. And we have to deal with it because we want to please God. So we must deal with everything that is offensive to God. And I pray that that's the posture you're taking today before we say, Lord, here am I. Is there any area of my life where you are displeased? Is there anything in my life that is offensive to you? Is there anything I'm doing in my family, in my business, in my work, in my ministry? Is there anything in my life that is hidden that you are not pleased with? Oh Lord, I want it dealt with. That puts us in a place of journeying to please God. I pray that will be the way you go this week. This day, to say, I want to please God. I need the presence of God. And when we talk about the presence of God, some will say, you don't need to pray about the presence of God because God is everywhere. God is everywhere. But there is a presence of God that, can become personal. When God said to Gideon, the Lord is with you, mighty man of valor, he wasn't talking about his omnipresence because God is everywhere. If he's about omnipresence, he's even with the enemies of Israel. So, but we're talking about the vital, the active presence of God, that you can be sure that, God is on your side. That's what that means. So I pray that today you can take off in the week. On this day that opens the womb of the week, you're taking off knowing that the Lord is with me this week and I am pursuing his pleasure, I'm doing his will, I'm on his side. The Lord bless you.